So let's start with Google Moderator, because I guess everybody wants to know this anyway. So what about AngularJS 1.x long-term maintenance with the new AngularJS 2.x?
Yes. Am I on?
No.
Hello, hello.
Yeah.
Is that working? Okay, great. All right, so it's interesting. We actually haven't finished 1.3 yet, so we're not deprecating it. This is actually one of the biggest questions we've gotten since this morning's talk on 2.0. And putting guarantees behind open source software is usually not something you do unless you pay for it. But I think a reasonable expectation would be that after we release 2.0 final, that something like a year and a half to 2 years beyond that, we would support 1.3 for things like bug fixes and security patches and whatnot. There will still be a lot of development that happens in 1.3, and we know that it has a lot of life left in it. This is still the best Angular that exists today. 2.0, it's in development. So if you're wondering what should I be thinking about in terms of developing on, if you're writing it today, definitely 1.3. We're going to support you guys. If you're thinking about developing something next year sometime, let's talk about 2.0 when we get to next year.
And we should remind everybody that we have 1,600 or more applications at Google that run on 1x.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we need to support those.
Yes. It's not just folks outside of Google will be supported. Good point. All right, maybe a question from the audience. Someone got one? Yeah.
I was really interested to see the way Dart did the components with the shadow DOM. And I asked the question at the time about whether that's something that finds its way into Angular 2, but they couldn't answer. So I was wondering.
Are you saying it? So that was the question in Angular Dart, we use shadow DOM.
Yeah, and will it find its way into Angular 2?
Okay, Mishko, you want to talk about this?
Yes, it will definitely find its way into Angular 2. Shadow DOM, we actually have two ways to run this. We can run it as if your browser supports Shadow DOM. We will be able to just take advantage of it. If not, we're going to emulate Shadow DOM, and we actually have this emulation already working in Angular Dart. And so we're pretty clear on how this is going to work. So yes, expect to see the Angular to be built on top of Shadow DOM.
Yeah. Let's go right over here.
Yes, so before you were answering the question regarding long-term support with 1.3, regarding user service support in the core 8, what would support the core 8?
Sorry, so this is, say it again, a question about IE8 support?
Yes.
Yes, so we've, 1.3, we stopped supporting IE8. And 1.2 still does support IE8. So if you want to develop Angular for IE8, definitely the 1.2 branch is the place to go.
Do we still support that or not? Like long-term support for 1.2?
I think 1.2 we don't have a plan for. I don't know, Igor, do you have an opinion on this?
There might be a few bug fixes still coming in, but it's the development on 1.2 is going to slow down. So really just critical things. We want everybody to migrate to 1.3 as soon as possible, and most of the development will then happen there in the 1x branch.
If you can convince big companies to not use either strength.
Yeah.
We're trying to help. So hey, just a couple words on this. We're really driving towards.
Just to repeat the question.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. The question was or the statement was, hey, I'll paraphrase. We need to still support people on IE8, and yet you guys are moving on. What should we do? The new world is mobile, and really the only game in town for that is new browsers. And so we are putting all of our efforts into supporting what will be when Angular 2 comes out. So we want you guys to be really successful there. And so yes, we are dropping support for IE8. And when we get to 2.0, it's only going to be evergreen browsers. And this is really the only place that the web is going to be successful. So we're trying to run to where the ball is going to be rather than to where it is today.
And you can actually be part of this because big companies are supporting old browsers mainly because all of us work hard to support these old browsers. So by like, it's not a pleasure for anybody to work and support IE8, but as long as we have software that still runs on IE8, big companies will say, okay, we need to run on IE8. So the sooner we convince everybody that this is a really bad idea long term, the sooner we can move on and be in a bit much happier place.
Yeah. Let's see. Maybe one back from.
Someone's asking, when will you backport the new router to 1.3, as you promised?
Good question. Is Brian still here? Brian, do you want to field that?
I have two mics now. Okay, I'm going to double answer this question. Okay, so it's going to be its own module, like it's in its own repo, kind of its own releases. The reason that we did that is just to not block 1.3. Like, we want to get things to you guys as fast as possible, and that's the right way to do it.
Yeah, that was a yes.
Yes, it's coming.
And details. All right, another one from the audience somewhere. There's one way back there.
Yeah, I just have a question. Why is NG messages, like, why are NG messages so different from NG switch? Because it looks like it's the same thing. Like, the syntax that's...
Question is, what's the difference between NG messages and NG switch?
Okay, so NG messages, it is similar to NG switch. And the whole idea of NG switch was that when you're reading the template, it's very clear, like, that the value is going to be 1 or 2 or 3. It's not going to be an expression that's going to update for each branch. NG messages, maybe in 2.0, could be merged in with NG switch, but they're just two separate directives that were planned at separate times, and we didn't want to break an existing directive or add breaking changes to it. And the whole idea of NG messages, it's an sort of a bit of an experiment to see if people use it and to see if it's an actual feature. And if it is, then maybe it could go into core someday, or maybe it could be a part of 2.0 in a different way.
The biggest differentiator for NG messages is the reusability. So unlike with NG switch, NG messages allow you to define a default set of messages in one place and then reuse them in other places. And this is something that NG switch doesn't have, and it doesn't make sense for NG switch to support such a feature.
And finally, it also allows you to override changes. So if you have a general template of messages, and you want to have a specific error message for something like an email, you can override the required message for that.
Cool. Another one from the audience in here. There was some, how about right here on the, next to the pedestal?
I seem to notice that the controller has syntax, the preferred way to attach controllers to a template. True. But I learned now that when you have a form controller, it's actually not applying to that name. You need to have, like, name is syntax fill. Is that solved in 1.3?
So, I'm sorry, I didn't quite get the question. Did someone else get it?
I see, when you use the controller as way for a form controller, you still have no access to the validation in the template. I noticed. You always have to need to add the name to the form as well. It's very practical.
So the question is around controller as and forms. Maybe let's grab us offline and explain more to us.
Okay, because I'm really wondering.
Okay, great. Great, great. Right back there. And yell.
I'm curious why you used create AtScript instead of going Dart, because it looks very similar to me, and you kind of recreating Dart in JavaScript. You're going to transpile it anyway, so why not go Dart and transpile it?
Okay, so the question is, why are you creating AtScript and not just going whole hog Dart? And I'll give one answer, and Mishka, I'll let you follow up. So we've been using Dart for a long time, and I actually have a big team of about 90 developers who, there's a smaller front-end team, but like a big team who uses Dart and Angular Dart on the front end. And they really like the productivity they get out of Dart. I think the thing that we see with Dart is it's great in its own environment, but it has much less support for it than the great community of folks who do JavaScript. And what we're trying to do is bring some of those qualities that we see in Dart onto JavaScript in a way that we think they can be accepted by implementation in specs and in browsers. And so, having had this great experience in Dart, we were thinking, well, you know, what would be the path to the greatest number of people taking advantage of it. And that's why we're doing AtScript. Mishko, do you have more thoughts?
No, I think that sums it up pretty good. In Dart, when you run something on Dart2JS, the code that it generates is more like an assembly than a human-readable code. And as a result, you can't really mix and match existing libraries. So Dart2JS doesn't really, I mean, it's possible to call into JavaScript, but you cannot marshal objects. You can only marshal primitive types. So you cannot easily reuse things like jQuery and so on. And so that's the primary motivator, is like, how do you bring introspection and metadata annotation to JavaScript in a way that doesn't at the same time alienate the existing rich community that exists over there?
All right, another, maybe right in here.
Mishko was very complimentary about TypeScript and the ideas behind it. Have the Microsoft developers used a data about AtScript, where they stand on supporting AtScript and Visual Studio, etc.?
So the question was, where does Microsoft stand on supporting AtScript? Where's the rest, the TypeScript people, the Visual Studio people? They haven't announced anything, and since we don't work for Microsoft, we're not going to comment on their plans. But we do talk to them, and we think they're very cool, and we would love to work with them on this. So, we have hope. Okay, maybe another one from the moderator.
Is there anything we can start doing with our 1.x code base today to prepare for 2.x?
So how do we prepare for 2.0? I think the answer, actually, Igor, I'll let you answer. And then if you don't want to answer, you can throw it back to me.
I would say just write the best 1x code you can. Enjoy that while it lasts. And once 2.0 is ready, then we'll figure out what is the best way to migrate. Because we are, at this point, we are really trying to create the best 2.0 ever. And once we know what that is, we'll go back and see what is the best migration path. Because if we went the other way around, that would kind of constrain what we can do in 2.0, and we don't really want that.
I mean, I think to add to that, I think, follow the best practices that we've evolved as a community. We've actually, Igor's been spending time with John Papa reviewing his style guide. The more alike your code looks like, the easier it's going to be for us to predict what a good migration path is going to be for you guys.
So kind of a follow-up question is, would you suggest we start writing ES6 now? And using Tractor or whatever?
Should we start writing ES6 now? Yes, start writing ES6
I think
now.
that's a clear yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think this is the thing that you can start using now. Tracer, as it exists today, is ready for work. We've been using it for quite a while. And Eric, I don't know if you have other examples of folks who are using it.
So you can start using ES6 now and type your ES5 code through Tracer, and then you start slowly migrating by adding one feature by another feature. Like start with something simple like arrow functions. They'll give you a lot of bang for the bucks, and then eventually start using classes and modules and just keep going.
Right, and so ES6 has also the module syntax, right? And one option there is just to use require, and then use browse verify to bring this to the client. Works pretty well. I mean, no to require, not AMD.
Yeah. Maybe another one from moderator.
Well, this question everybody wants to know, but I guess there's no answer. Could you provide expected schedule for 2.0 release, RC finally?
I think, yeah, our crystal ball about predicting the future is not good. I mean, the only thing we can say is we've never had a bigger team working on Angular. It was 3 people who delivered 1.0. It was 5 people who delivered Angular Dart and 1.3 as separate teams. We now have everybody working on the same 2.0 code base, pretty much. Brian's going to finish up on the 1.3 stuff. So we, there's the mythical man month, but we expect this to go pretty rapidly. I think the only thing that we can give to you is we're going to dedicate ourselves to being really public about our progress. So we will continue to do weekly meeting notes, and as we have benchmarks, we'll publish them, and as we have demos, we'll publish them, and you'll be able to know to a pretty good degree how we're coming along. Okay, another one from the crowd, right? Maybe right there. The Delta.js man. Yes. I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
If I want to write a library in
AtScript, what's recommended practice for supplying the runtime code necessary, the shims and so on? Should I bundle it, or is there a library that I can depend on?
So how do I provide the runtime shims for ES6? Eric, you want to chat about that?
Yeah, so right now, the runtime for Tracer is kind of big. It just provides everything you might need. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done here to make that more configurable and basically look at the code and see what you're actually using and then generate the minimized runtime based on that. So we need to do more work here.
We have that on our radar, and Eric and we will work together to make that.
Actually, just today we discussed this with Eric, and we have some ideas about how we can make it better. So this is on our radar, and we're working on it.
Okay, how about all the way back against the wall back there?
So the question is, what was the reason that you didn't just fork TypeScript on GitHub?
Why did we not fork TypeScript on GitHub? Okay, Mishko, I'll let you answer. By the way, we have a lot of respect for the TypeScript folks, and they've done amazing work. So.
The reason for that is when we originally started to look at it, the TypeScript wasn't set up in a way, this has changed by the way, it wasn't set up in a way in which we could write another front end or back end, depending on how you look at it. For it, one of the goals for us was that we need to be able to generate Dart code. And because the way Tracer was written, it was more hackable at the beginning. Since then, we actually learned that the TypeScript team has rewritten their code base to make it more hackable. So the reasons we had not chosen it back then might not apply today. But the original kind of motivation for this was, have a single source base so that we can generate both JavaScript and TypeScript and have ES6 support. That's another thing that the TypeScript doesn't have today, is that they're not fully aligned with ESScript code, so you cannot write ES6 inside of it just yet, but they are working on ES6 support. So those are the kind of the thinking behind it.
Yeah, and I would like to add that I really love TypeScript. It's a great project and great goals, but Tracer is further along on the ES6 track than TypeScript.
Cool. Do we have another one on moderator?
Any tooling plan to help migrate from 1.x to 2.x?
Oh, I mean, we kind of answered this. We don't have a firm story around migration yet. Just stay tuned. If you have particular ideas on how this might go, we're all ears.
Would there be any plans to be able to run Angular 2 alongside 1.x to allow large apps to be slowly migrated component by components rather than an all or nothing approach?
Yeah, will we be able to run Angular 2 and Angular 1 in the same browser? It's an interesting idea. It's science fiction right now. We haven't really explored it, and we need to get a little further down the 2.0 roadmap before we can figure it out. Igor, anything to?
No, I think that was right. But I think it would be good for us to figure this out, just given the number of applications we have at Google.
Yeah.
So I think this question will keep on coming, and we'll need to look into that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Another one from the audience. Right there, man with beard. Oh, the question is, when can I stop doing server-side pre-rendering of my HTML so that Google can crawl it? And the answer is at the end of this year. And so the Webmaster, on the Webmaster Tools blog, they made an announcement that they're going to start rendering all your JavaScript by the end of the year. And they actually have a tool so that you can go take a look at how it does rendering of your pages. And so Angular and all of the other frameworks like it will just automatically be crawled. Nothing new for you to do. Okay, how about over here, Martin?
Okay, one question. Do you guys have any plan to support isomorphic AngularJS so that you can render it from the server and then continue the flow from the client?
Yeah, so the question is, are we going to support isomorphic server-side rendering so that we can do it both on the server side and the client side? Igor, you want to talk about that?
Sure, we can talk about it. So we looked into this in the past. We actually built a version of Angular that did this. We weren't very keen on it, and right now our goal is to just make the client-side startup time so fast that you are not going to need this. Because the isomorphic apps, you need them for two reasons. One is the startup time, and the other one is SEO. SEO is going to be solved by the end of the year. So, and the startup time, I think it's better for us to just figure it out on the client side, and with things like service workers and new APIs that are coming to the browser, I believe that this is going to be possible. And it's going to be less overhead for the whole development community, because you can stay on the client side and it's going to be as fast as if you were splitting it out between the two.
All right, another question from the crowd. Right in front here, blue.
So scope.apply will be removed in Angular 2, so how Angular will know when something happens outside of it?
Yeah, Mishko, do you want to talk about that?
I was going to give it to Brian, but
yeah,
I can talk
actually,
about
that is Brian. That should be for Brian.
So I gave a presentation at ngConf this year about zones.
Oh, sorry, let's
Oh,
repeat.
sure, repeat
Yeah.
the question. How is it that Angular 2 will not have to have apply? The short answer, what was that? Scope apply, yes. You can still use, function.apply, like that still works. That's a JavaScript feature. We're not going to take that away from you. Yes, how does scope.$apply disappear? The answer is zones, and it's a little bit hard to explain, but I think I did an okay job at ngConf. So go watch that video, and maybe it'll make sense. And if not, bother me on the internet. Sound good?
You can also go check out Angular Dart today, where this technology is already being used, and it works wonderfully.
All right, another one in the crowd here. Were there some in front? Yeah, right there.
What was the use case for research or benchmark that decided that you will still use guides instead of like object observe or push?
So the question is, what sort of decision drove not using object observe and still use our dirty checking? And Mishko, you've done most of this
we've got
research.
tons of looking into it, and it's not a clear-cut, simple answer. It turns out that setting up object observe is a lot more expensive than setting up dirty checking. Whereas if you have a steady state application, the object observe will report back to you in obviously quicker way than dirty checking will. And so because these two things perform, one has a constant setup time, the other one has a constant runtime, because of these two parameters, depending on how you set up your benchmark, you can get any performance numbers that you want, which makes it kind of hard to figure this out. The current strategy is that the current change detection system will have a pluggable strategy where we will be able to offer the object to kind of like plugins and say, hey, do you know how to watch this thing? If so, please report back to me. And if nobody can say that they know how to watch a particular kind of object, we default to a dirty checking mechanism. And the reason to do it that way is because object observe, while it can do many things, it cannot watch property on elements, it cannot watch getters or setters, and certainly cannot watch functions, and we need to support all of these strategies as well. So there's not a clear-cut answer in there in which one to use, and we're kind of realizing that the dirty checking approach in many cases is actually the preferred approach, and it's kind of where we're heading.
So you want to talk about the optimizations you've done in the dirty checking itself?
There's been a lot of optimizations in it. It turns out that one of the huge things about dirty checking is the memory pressure. Just the simple cost of creating the reaction function that forces you to instantiate the closure is part of the problem. And so in the new change detection system that we have, we'll, for example, get rid of the reaction functions so that we don't have to instantiate them on every, so if you have like ng repeat and you unroll yourself, not every single binding needs to get a kind of closure to go with it. The other thing we're going to do is we realize that the fastest way to set up the whole dirty checking chain is to kind of create a prototype chain of what it will look like before we actually instantiate it, and we get really good at making copies of existing chains. So we're also optimizing in this way. The performance numbers we're getting, off the top of my head, last time I checked, is something around the order of about 20,000 dirty checks per millisecond. Is that right? I think that's about the number. That's a pretty high number, right, in 1 millisecond of what you can do. Now, these are more complicated, so if you have an expression like a.b.c, you're actually using up 3 checks in there as well. But these are numbers that are sufficiently high enough where you can actually build relatively complex apps without the need of things like object observe. Again, the issue there isn't that the object observer is slow, is that this cost of setting it up and destroying after yourself and cleaning up is kind of the issue.
There's one more thing that we didn't mention, which is the mobile browsers that we want to support, not all of them support Object Observe, and this is why we need to keep their checking around.
Yeah, okay, right in front here.
In 1.x, two-way binding is default. Will single-way binding be default in 2.0?
Oh.
You mean for components? For components?
So the question was, what are we doing with two-way binding in 2.0, right? Yeah.
So, well, it's slightly more complicated. So in 1x, the default binding is one-way binding. The two-way binding exists only if you use ng model or if you have a component that has binding set up, the scope binding set up. Those are the only two places where we use two-way data binding. In 2.0, this will remain similar. Like primary way of binding is going to be one-way data binding, and we mentioned that we're looking into controlling the data flow, and this kind of forced us to rethink the whole two-way data binding thing. And there are many questions here, and we don't have all the answers yet.
Right back there next to the column.
Migrating from 1.2 to 1.3, what are the biggest migration pitfalls?
So what is the migration from 1.2 to 1.3 like? We have a migration guide. If you go to docs.angularjs.org/guide/migration, you'll see all the changes that happen between 1.2 and 1.3. From what I heard from other teams, it's relatively painless unless you're doing something super weird. So in most cases, it shouldn't be too difficult to upgrade.
Okay. Do we have another one from the moderator?
Yep. What about lazy loading for large AngularJS apps?
Lazy loading, sure. Igor, you want to talk about that?
Yes, absolutely. So this is one of the questions we get. It's probably one of the top questions we get for 1x and also for 2.0. So in 2.0, definitely. This is something we need to do for mobile applications as well as for large enterprise-grade applications. So the router is going to support lazy code loading, and also the ES6 module system is going to help with this. So yes.
Cool. Maybe another one from moderator.
An AngularJS package repository was listed into the ng2 progress tracker. Do you have any news about this?
Say that again?
Like a package manager, a repository package.
Yes, I can take that one. I think one feature that we didn't think through in 1x was the third-party component model. And this is something we want to change in Angular 2. I strongly believe that a good ecosystem is one that is modularized and that is pluggable. And we have this in 1x when you do the package management yourself. So either you use Bower or you use NPM and you wire all the packages together. Angular can pick it up. But I think it's too much work right now. So one of our goals is to make it very smooth. If you want some third-party component, you should be able to just use a tool to bring the component and just use it instead of you manually having to wire up modules and load the right files and all this stuff. So we have a design doc in our Angular 2 design doc folder on package management, and we did research on NPM, Bower, and some other solutions. And our current thinking is that NPM is the best package manager out there, and we should just figure out how we can use it smoothly. And it seems that NPM team also thinks along the same lines. So I'm thinking that the future of Angular 2 is going to be very NPM focused, so that you can just bring in packages and it's just going to work very easily.
Okay.
Are you going to handle ARIA roles and accessibility as a first-class citizen in 2.0?
Are we going to handle ARIA roles as a first-class citizen in 2.0? Yeah, it's a good question. Marcy, do you want to start with some of our plans? So a lot of this is going to be based on the components we write, and that means material design. Marcy, you want to talk about it?
Sure. Yeah. So, not having worked on 2.0 yet, I can't speak to the future plans of that specifically, but there's definitely a future for NG ARIA. We have to identify places where we can be helpful to developers but not affect performance. So it has to be looked at pretty carefully. One thing I'd like to do is one micro feature would be, add alt attributes if they're missing. But there's a cost if you're going and looking at the DOM and looking at every element that needs that. We have to do some benchmarks and make sure that it's actually useful. Because we don't want to slow things down. It's kind of a balancing act if we're going to manipulate the DOM in that way.
So,
in development mode, yeah, that's an option.
Well, one thing to think about when we're talking about accessibility is we're going to add some support for making it easier. You guys actually have to test this in screen readers, at magnification, for contrast. We're not going to be able to just, it's accessible. It's unfortunately not a thing we're going to reach.
It's not a checkbox, it's a continuum. Yeah, it takes time. Obviously, there's some more work to be done with that. I'm really excited that this is part of the conversation, so I think it can only get better from where we started, frankly.
Mike, do you have a question?
Yeah. Google's famous for cutting projects that, aren't fun anymore for somebody. Even if they're popular for a small group of people, vocal people, what's the sense of Angular team or Angular in Google, from a sort of political point of view?
Okay, so the question is, will Angular be cut tomorrow and we should all go home? I don't know the future. I do know we're growing. I do know that the graph about the number of developers at Google using it goes like this at about a 45-degree angle. I think as long as I'm at Google, we'll have a future for Angular.
Does anyone have a question about any router or protector or material? Now that we have Julian.
Good point. Anyone have a question in those areas? One right
now
here.
or never.
I was wondering if there is going to be an ARIA testing, also be added to protected, behavior testing, but for
Could we do accessibility testing via protractor? Julie?
Yes, we could. And this has actually been somewhere on the to-do list to investigate for a while, to look into more ways that we can do automatic testing for accessibility and also things like maybe just best practices in other ways. So yes, it is on the to-do list, and I know that there are some teams experimenting with it, and stay tuned.
I think also the NG hint that Brian showed us at the end of today would be a good place for some potential hints. Okay.
Yep.
It actually, so the question is how does the browser pause function, which actually stops and lets you play with the browser and then continue your tests, how does that work with timeouts? It works, it's because it's actually using V8 pause and debug, so at the JavaScript interpreted level, it is stopped.
But I think there might be a confusion, Protractor does not use Jasmine, right? Or does it?
So Protractor does use Jasmine, but you can also use other frameworks if you would like to, such as Mocha. And I got this question earlier. Protractor actually does use Jasmine. There are layers on top of Jasmine to adapt it to work with Node and to work with Protractor, but down at the very core, there is a little Jasmine there.
Any question on material or no?
No, right here.
Yeah, I have a question about building on top of material framework. I mean, there are a lot of issues with Bootstrap and building on top of that. I'm wondering what's the angle for material.
Naomi, do you want to come up and take that one? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Naomi.
Andrew.
I'm on the Angular team. So the question was, what about building on top of the Angular material project? What about the issues that other people have experienced building on top of Bootstrap? Will those be the same as now that we have material design? So my answer is, I don't know specifically what your issues are, but this morning, in fact, I filed a bug about how we're handling our CSS, which is an issue that was also a problem for other users on Bootstrap, and so it's a high priority to find a solution. So my request to you would be, if there are things that you know about that have been a problem for you in the past, file an issue and send them to me on our repository, which is just under Angular/material, and I will look through them, and this is the best possible time for you to send me this kind of feedback before we nail down all of our breaking changes.
And Andrew, do you have some more specific?
Yes,
yeah.
my mic is working good. We are different perspective on the answer. We are working, we are planning to reuse materials logic, not the directives that actually use the logic, but controllers, services, etc. In other frameworks like Ionic specifically, we are planning to bring in some things like the logic for tabs, for even side menus or dialogues into other frameworks, and we plan to allow that very easily with material. So yes, hopefully you will be able to pull in controllers and services from material and use them to implement the components in your app with a different skin if you wish.
I'll just add that I was chatting with Max and Thomas today about possibility of abstracting some of the logic from Angular material into either Angular core or just like separate module that we could build material on top of so that you could reuse some of that stuff without the skin. So like all the infrastructure and all the logic would be separate from the presentation, and you could provide alternative presentation.
Yes, and it's a priority for us at Ionic because we want to use that stuff as well.
Question over here.
Yeah, about material design. First of all, I'll preface this with, I think it looks cool, and I like the design. But considering that it's a very aesthetic thing, and being subject to tastes and fashions which change, has it been thought about how it could evolve with changing fashion? For example, rounded corners. At one point we all wanted them, then we got them, and I guess we don't want them anymore. What if we want round corners again? Is it built into the spec of material design that they're banned, or how would this work in the future?
Okay, so I think the question is, how will material evolve as fashions evolve on the web?
Yeah.
And maybe on mobile. Naomi, do you want to chat about that?
So when we were speccing out the material design project for Angular, I went and talked to our UX team, and I said, when will we be done? When are you going to be finished with the spec? And they said, haha, we're working with users very closely, and the spec that we've announced today may not be the absolute final spec. It's not real until it's in the hands of people, and we understand how people are using it. So in the process of coming up with material design, they have worked very closely with user testing to really get a sense of, are these design components doing what we intend them to do? Do users get it? Are they working with them in an intelligent way? And when something's not working, they tweak it, they change it. Like you've seen this, for instance, in the evolution of the Roboto font on Android. And so it's very much intended to be a living spec, and our goal in working on Angular material is to build our infrastructure in such a way that we can respond to that quickly as they update the spec.
And this is actually different for Angular, because in the past we've not had a default widget set, and material is way past the widget set. But I think one of the nice things about having something people can depend on that will be true for all of Google's products, that as the spec changes, like we'll update our libraries and you can take advantage of it.
And additionally, material is very, very themable. There's a pull request open right now that we're about to merge, and you'll see it.
Cool. Right back there.
Okay, the thing about material that interests me, it's not the appearance, because that is CSS, but it's the user experience, the UX. So can we have any access to the research? Because I think that improve the whole community about the process that you have followed to get to those interactions. Can we get that document somewhere?
Yeah, so the question is, how do we understand the research that went into material design about the user interaction? And maybe that's really more interesting than the CSS affectation that's part of it. And I totally agree. And I think the team that did this did a really great job of explaining it at Google I/O. And all of those videos are up on the web, and I would just go to YouTube and search for material design, Google I/O, and there's a lot of things to look at.
You can also find a lot of resources at google.com/design, which is the official site that the design team has for all of this information. I know they present frequently at conferences, and they also publish scientific papers, so that's a good place to get more information.
Yeah, and if it's not obvious, material design is not something that the Angular team invented. This is a Google-wide project to unify our interfaces across all of our form factors from desktops down through watches. Okay, yeah, right there.
I've heard from a couple of projects that they use screenshot-based comparisons of testing, like Ionic, for example. But I have not been able to find any tutorial or tool to do this. How is this done?
How do we do screenshot-based testing? Julie is familiar with this. Oh, actually, or how does Ionic do it? It's a good question, too.
So initially we tried to use Huxley, which is a tool that somebody from Facebook initially published. We were inspired by their blog post, but we found it not maintained. Somebody is currently rewriting a version in Node, but when we needed it, it was in a very early stage. So currently we do use Protractor to actually click through the app, and then we take a screenshot and we upload it to our server and compare it there. Our process is closed right now, but we do want to open it to other developers, and it's planned.
And just to add on, I do know of a couple other similar closed processes which involve taking a screenshot from Protractor and then uploading to some sort of server that will do like a pdiff type thing. This is also something that we're really interested in making easier, or at least having some sort of documentation pointing towards. And I think that as mobile and animations and all of this becomes more important, this is going to be something that we would really like to support more easily. So stay even more tuned.
Right down here, right down in the aisle.
Yeah, for enterprise apps, would you say that it'd be better to use Angular, Dart, and Dart for huge teams working on a really big problem, rather than using your
So the question is it better for enterprise apps to use Angular Dart on Dart language than, say, AngularJS 1.3 on JavaScript? I think the answer is you should use the language you like. And our intention for 2.0 is that the APIs will be exactly the same because we'll be generating both out of the same source tree. And so, really, like, you should pick the language that your development team feels has most affinity for. I'll repeat your question.
Hello. Yeah. Are there any plans to offer official certification? Yes.
Oh, will we offer official certification like some other companies do? I'm not super interested in it, but if someone else wants to offer certification, I think it'd be great. Maybe a Pluralsight could do it. EdCAD certified, yeah, that'd be good.
So we could certify the certifier first.
Yeah. I don't like tests. I don't like writing, but someone might want to do it.
Will I have to get certified?
You. Like, that's the funny thing. We might fail. I don't want to know. Okay, question here.
I think Spire, or I don't know how to pronounce it, they wanted to offer a course. Is it like an online thing where you get a little badge, 100 of it? Can you say that in this presentation?
I'm happy to publicize anyone wants to offer Angular certification.
I think they said that in anyone here from Spire, you do these courses and you get this little badge with 100. Isn't that like a certification?
Yes, they are in process because it was a talk about it.
Yeah, so apparently there's some folks who have this in process. There are some folks who will support this. Seems like a fun thing. All right, over here.
Do you think that Dart has meaning that AtScript is much more like Dart, and those features of the language itself are getting aligned together? So what's your personal opinion on saying
What's my opinion on Dart's future? Again, I've been really poor at predicting the future. Let me tell you a story. My first job, I worked for this guy, Steve Jobs. And there was this guy who was going to come, and my job was to be his lackey and set up demos and fun things for him. And there was this guy named Tim who was going to come show a demo to Steve. He was come from Switzerland. And I said, what's your demo called? And he said, it's called the World Wide Web. And I said, well, what's it for? He's like, well, you can connect all the world's research papers and link between them. And I said, well, it's a dumb name, and I don't think Steve's going to like it. So if I predict something good or bad, don't like buy the stock that I predict you should short. I don't know.
Maybe it's a good thing because it wouldn't have been so open, the web.
Yeah, I mean, actually, you guys get to decide. I think it's going to be based on popularity.
It is a popularity contest, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's a popularity issue because JavaScript is much more used than Dart.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of language options now. I mean, I'm kind of a fan of ClojureScript, Clojure with a J. I mean, like a lot of folks like CoffeeScript. This is one of the wonderful things about the world of JavaScript is, for a while, JavaScript has been a really nice compilation target, and that's kind of one of the goals of the language. So, like, I like to see lots of experimentation happen. Question here.
Are there any plans to improve internationalization for large-scale apps, for example, for different components from the Java world under the properties bundle, which I can separate, translate, and then include in my application? Is that the plans for student or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know. Who wants to take the question about how will we localize our apps? Let me just say yes. We have big teams at Google who really want this and won't let us ship a 2.0 without the feature. I don't know if we have interesting things to say about how we'll do it.
So this is one area where being at Google is kind of not good for the open source community because we have pretty good internal infrastructure for internationalization of applications. And unfortunately, this infrastructure is not currently available to developers. So while we solve this problem internally at Google, it's pretty difficult for our team alone to solve this. So if there's somebody who's willing to create a generic internationalization platform, then we're happy to work with them and solve this once for all for everybody outside of Google.
Good point. Way back over there. No, you're the one. Yeah, you. Yes. Yeah.
Since Google support Angular and Angular is so great, why? Two questions. When Google will completely move to use Angular, like integrate Angular totally, like in Gmail and so on. And other question is, we had a really great presentation about Firebase, and when can we expect similar providers for like Gmail, Google Drive, Maps, and so on?
Okay, so I didn't understand the second question really, but let me answer the first question, which was, when will all of Google rewrite all of our software on top of Angular?
Yes.
Seems like a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty soon. I'm pretty. So here's the thing to think about. Like we don't rewrite all of our software every year, and some of our teams have been working a long time. Gmail's been around for quite a while, and there are hundreds and hundreds of developer years invested in Gmail. So let's say that Angular is 5 times better than what they're currently using. It doesn't measure up to the amount of rewrite that's required. So like maybe never is really the answer. Until everybody has gone through a rewrite cycle. But like you saw our graph, like we're getting lots of adoption by teams.
And the second question was like the opposite way. Like Google supports Angular, and there is a very good Firebase integration inside Angular, like Firebase and everything, sockets, very great. And do you have like idea about integrating Google services and products inside Angular, like with the provider?
Okay. The question is the other question is, when will things like Google Drive be supported as kind of first-class citizens inside Angular? Yeah, it's a good question. I don't have a plan for that, and Google's a big company, And I think it would be a good idea. But that, you know, the Google Drive team, like I don't really speak for them, but my intuition is that they have a lot of different folks to support. So they provide a very generic interface to these things, and unfortunately leave it up to you guys. So either it would be on the Angular team's job to build integrations for all of these thousands of APIs, or
there is a Google Drive web components.
yes, for Google Drive there is an answer, but there are many other APIs, or some folks out in the community to do these things. And I think it's probably going to be folks in the community. Like a thing we might do is make it easier for you to find the ones that exist. I mean, there are integrations with Angular for Maps and Drive, and you know, one of the nice things you can use in cloud is this thing called endpoints. So there was a real convoluted, not so good answer. You're welcome.
Would you like to help?
Yeah, you could help, yes. Okay. How are we doing on time? We're done. Oh, okay, we're done. All right, thank you. We'll be around. Yeah, hey. One minute. Hold on. Wait. Don't anybody move. I want to thank Patrick in particular and all of the other conference organizers who put this on for a fantastic conference. Thank you all for coming.
Let's take a picture with the whole team. And
yes, everybody come on up. We can take pictures. It's good. Good.
Let's get all the speakers in here. For those who are still with us. Yep. Douglas. Come on in. Douglas. Martin, Gonto. Ari, are you still here? Ari Lerner. Whoever's here and contributed to this conference, let's get on stage. Hoping it doesn't collapse.
Are we missing any speakers who should come up?
All right, thank you. Thanks, everyone.